All right, we're back and ready to dive in. This time it's Joann Fabrics.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Lots of people are worried about that.
For sure, lots of you sent in YouTube videos, from like crafters and news and all that. And it's, well, kind of confusing, honestly. Like Joann's is saying one thing, but then what's happening in stores and online is, well, kind of different.
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher, isn't it?
Big time. Like, for a lot of people, Joann's isn't just a store. It's like their creative space, right?
Absolutely. It's a community hub for lots of folks.
So, okay, January 2025, Joann's files for Chapter 11.
And that's actually their second time in a year. Got to point that out.
Yeah, that's not a great sign, is it?
Not really, but I mean, Chapter 11 doesn't automatically mean closing up shop.
Right.
It gives them some breathing room to, restructure, maybe sell the business.
Okay.
There's already a bid on the table from Gordon Brothers.
Oh, really? I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, but they're still shopping around looking for other potential buyers.
Okay, so there's still a chance.
Definitely.
But, I mean, things still feel kind of shaky. Especially when you compare what Joann's is saying officially with what's actually happening.
Right.
They keep saying that stores are staying open, online too, that employees will be paid, benefits won't change. But is that the whole truth?
Well, that's where things get a little less clear. One of the YouTubers you sent, Crafting with Paula, I think it was, she paints a pretty different picture
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
of her local Joann's in Portland. Messy, disorganized, shelves are practically bare.
Yikes, that sounds bad.
She said it feels like a ghost town, basically.
Wow. Not exactly the inspiring creative haven it's supposed to be.
Nope, not at all.
Did she talk about the staff at all?
She did, and that's where the disconnect between what the company's saying and what's really going on, it really comes through.
Okay, how so?
She actually talked to an employee who was, well, visibly upset. Turns out they hadn't gotten any official word about the situation. Nothing internal, no communication.
Oh, wow. So even with all those promises from Joann's, there's like zero transparency?
Exactly.
That's a big red flag, isn't it?
Definitely makes you wonder how they're even managing to function, if communication's that bad.
Yeah, like how do you keep things running if nobody knows what's going on?
Right. It's like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
And it makes you think, okay, if they're not being straight with their employees, what else are they not being honest about?
Precisely.
And honestly, it just makes me think about the people working there. Imagine going to work every day, like surrounded by empty shelves, wondering if you'll have a job next week.
Must be incredibly stressful.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
And that stress, it's got to be affecting customer service, the whole shopping experience. It's a domino effect.
Totally. It's kind of, well, it's sad, especially because Joann's means so much to people. It's more than just a place to buy stuff. It's, well, it's like a creative outlet for a lot of folks.
It's a social thing, too,
Yeah, totally. So it's like when that gets messed up, it has ripple effects.
Definitely.
Okay, so the store experience sounds pretty rough. What about online? Is that holding up any better?
Well, even online things aren't exactly as smooth as Joann's is making it sound.
Oh, okay.
This YouTuber, Paula, she actually started ordering online for curbside pickup or home delivery, because the store itself was just, well, so bad.
Makes sense, I guess, if it's that bad.
It kind of highlights this bigger trend we're seeing,
What do you mean?
Physical stores, they're having a hard time competing with online shopping. It's just so much easier for a lot of people.
True. But with crafting, there's that whole tactile thing. Like, you want to feel the yarn, see the colors in person. Can you really get that online?
That's the question, isn't it? It's like, can you replicate that feeling of discovery, stumbling across a perfect fabric or yarn?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine.
There's a certain magic to browsing, to the unexpected finds. You can't really get that online, no matter how good the website is.
So even online, there are, like, limitations.
For sure. It's not the seamless experience that Joann's wants you to believe it is.
You mentioned that Paula switched to online because the store was so rough. Did it get even worse?
Yeah, actually, she talks about this moment in one of her videos where she tried ordering paper pads online, something she'd done tons of times before. And get this, her order got canceled.
Really?
First time ever.
Okay, that's not a good sign at all, especially with them claiming everything's business as usual. So what did she do?
She decided to brave the store one more time, see what was actually going on. Even worse, even fewer things on the shelves, discounts were pretty limited, and the whole atmosphere was just, well, bleak. He said it felt desolate, almost like the life had been sucked out of it.
Ugh, that's depressing. It really sounds like things are going downhill fast. Was there anything specific that stood out to her this time?
There was one thing. In the middle of all this emptiness, she noticed one thing they had a ton of. Fabric. Boxes and boxes of it, unopened, just sitting there.
Wait, so they have all the fabric, but the shelves are bare. What's going on there?
Exactly. And that, well, it suggests a different problem. Not that they don't have stuff, but that they don't have the staff to, unpack it, put it out.
Which, if you remember, goes against what Joann said about employees.
Right.
Okay, wow. So it's not just that things are bad, it's that Joann's isn't being straight about it.
It's a much bigger story than they're letting on, that's for sure. And that's where we need to start thinking about the bigger picture. What does this mean for the crafting community as a whole? It's not just about one store or even one company. It's about the future of crafting and all the people who depend on it.
Absolutely. So we need to get some different perspectives, see what other people are saying about how this could impact the crafting world, right?
Exactly. And that's where this other YouTuber, Elise Rose Trochet, comes in. She's been talking about this a lot, sharing her own experiences and what she thinks a potential Joann's closure would mean for crafters, especially beginners and people who rely on Joann's as their main source for supplies. She also went to her local store and, like Paula, picked up on this vibe that doesn't really match the official story.
This is getting really interesting. Okay, let's see what Elise has to say. Okay, so Elise Rose Crochet, she made a video about all this Joann stuff, right? What was her take?
Yeah, she did. She went to her local Joann's to check things out, see for herself. But the atmosphere was so tense, she even felt weird about filming.
Really? That bad, huh?
Yeah, there was definitely an issue with, limited inventory and all that. But she also said there was just this feeling of unease among the employees. Like you could tell something was off.
Yeah, I could see that. Even if you don't know exactly what's going on, that kind of tension just hangs in the air, affects the whole experience.
Absolutely. And it's worth remembering that Joann's has been around for a while. It's got a long history of the crafting world. Started back in 1943, two immigrant families. Over the years, it grew to like over 800 stores. It really became like the place for crafters.
It's crazy to think how much it's changed over the years. Didn't they start out mainly selling fabric? When did they branch out to all the other crafts?
Yeah, that started picking up steam in the early 2000s, that whole DIY boom, scrapbooking and all that.
Right, right.
So Joann's, they saw the opportunity, expanded their stuff, and positioned themselves as like the one-stop shop for everything crafting.
Smart move, I guess. But I wonder, did that hurt the smaller craft stores, the independent ones?
Yeah, that's a valid point. When a giant like Joann's moves in, it can definitely put pressure on the little guys. It's a tough situation, no easy answers.
For sure.
Some people might argue that Joann's actually helped make crafting more popular overall, that everyone benefited in the end.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. Okay, but let's get back to Elise's concerns. She mentioned what a potential Joann's closure could mean for the whole crafting community, right? What are some of the things she's worried about?
Well, one big thing is yarn variety. She was worried that if Joann's goes under, major yarn brands could see a big dip in sales, and then they might start cutting back on the range of colors, textures, all that.
Oh, yeah, that would suck, especially for people who really love to, experiment with different yarns, finding that perfect one for their project.
Exactly. And she's also concerned about beginners, people who aren't as comfortable shopping for supplies online. There's something to be said for going to a store, seeing the yarn in person, feeling it, getting advice from staff.
Oh, totally. It's way less intimidating, right? Like you can ask questions, figure things out. Online could be overwhelming, especially if you're new to crafting.
Definitely, you lose that personal touch. But hey, even with all these worries, Elise also brought up some potential upsides to the situation.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, she said that if Joann's does close, it could actually create opportunities for other craft businesses like Michael's and Hobby Lobby. They might jump in to fill the gap, maybe even expand what they offer, attract some new customers.
Oh, so it's like one giant falls and others get a chance to rise up.
Kind of, yeah. It could shake up the whole craft retail scene. But what about the smaller stores, the independent ones? Could they benefit too?
Good question. Do you think so?
I think Elise is right on the money when she says that local yarn shops, independent craft stores, they might see a comeback. People who really value personal service, unique stuff, that sense of community, they might start looking to those smaller stores if Joann's isn't around anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like going back to the roots of crafting, before all the big box stores came along.
Exactly, and I think there's this growing desire for those authentic experiences. People are tired of feeling like just another number in some giant corporation's system. They want to connect with real people, feel like they belong somewhere.
Yeah, it's like supporting local businesses. It's not just about buying something. It's about being part of a community, creating a space where people can be creative together.
Absolutely. And that shift back to smaller, independent craft stores, it could be really good for both crafters and their communities.
Okay, so those are some potential upsides, but it's hard to ignore all the uncertainty hanging over Joann's and the whole crafting world, really. We've got these official statements, but then we have YouTubers like Paula and Elise showing us what's actually happening. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
What do you think? How's this all going to shake out?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think we're definitely seeing a turning point in the crafting world. This whole thing with Joann's, it's like a small version of what's happening in retail as a whole. E-commerce is booming, people are shopping differently, and the economy is putting pressure on businesses to adapt. It's a whole new ballgame.
You're right, it's like the old ways just aren't working anymore. But when it comes to crafting, which is so much about that hands-on experience, that sense of community, how do you adapt without losing what makes it special?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? There's no easy answer. But I do think there are ways for both online and physical craft businesses to do well in this new world. It's all about finding that balance.
Balance between what?
Between convenience and authenticity, between using technology and making sure you don't lose that human connection that makes crafting so meaningful.
So finding that sweet spot between the digital world and the real world, it's a challenge, but it's also exciting. Like we get to reimagine the whole crafting experience.
Totally. And the key is understanding that crafting isn't just a hobby. It's a way of life for a lot of people. It's about self-expression, about building community. It's deeper than just making things.
It really does feel like we're at this like crossroads, not just for Joann's, but for the whole crafting world. What happens next could really change how people create and connect with each other.
Yeah, I think you're right. And this whole situation with Joann's, it really makes us ask, like, what's the real value of a craft store these days? With everything moving online, I mean, is it just about convenience, about finding the cheapest stuff? Or is there something, like, more to it?
That's a good question. I mean, yeah, online shopping is super easy, but there's just something about like walking into a craft store, seeing everything laid out, touching the materials, getting ideas from the displays. You can't really do that online.
Exactly. It's the whole experience. The atmosphere, the sense of community, those little moments of discovery you get when you're browsing the aisles. A craft store can be like this creative hub, a place where people come together, learn from each other, share their passion.
Yeah, it's like a third space, not work, not home, but somewhere you could just be yourself and, be creative without feeling judged. And I think that's something we're losing as like more and more of our lives happen online.
Definitely. And don't forget about the human element. Talking to staff who actually know their stuff, bumping into other crafters, feeling like you're part of something bigger, those things all add to the experience, make it more fulfilling.
Okay, so for all you crafters out there listening, imagine for a second that your go-to Joann's closes. What would you do? Would you just switch to buying everything online? Or would you try to find some other options?
I think it would be a mix. Depends on the person and what's available to them. Some people might embrace online shopping, dive into that whole world of supplies from all over. Others might start going to local yarn shops, those smaller independent craft stores, or even like start making their own supplies.
Oh, wow, making your own supplies, that's next level. It's like becoming more self-sufficient, really connecting with the materials.
Right. It shows how resilient and creative the crafting community is. No matter what happens, crafters will find a way to adapt, to connect, and to keep making things.
Love that. So even with all the uncertainty around Joann's, it sounds like there's still hope for the future of crafting. It might look different, we might have to adjust, but the passion, the creativity, that's not going anywhere.
Exactly. And this whole situation, it might actually lead to some cool new stuff in the crafting world. Maybe we'll see more local craft stores popping up, more online communities where people can connect and collaborate, and maybe even like a renewed appreciation for handmade, one-of-a-kind things.
That's a great point. It's like going back to basics a little bit. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Joann's and the future of crafting, what's the one big question you want to leave our listeners with?
If the future of crafting is more and more online, how do we make sure it doesn't lose that human element, that feeling of community, that shared passion that makes it so special? That's what I'm thinking about.
That's something for all of us to think about and maybe even try to do something about. It's been awesome talking about this with you. Thanks for all your insights.
My pleasure.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the future of crafting, so hit us up on social media and let us know.
Keep creating, everyone.
Keep diving deep.